You might remember hearing about TDA last year when a group of cartel members took over an apartment building in Colorado. Watch.
It's scenes coming out of a movie as the Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua are seen breaking into apartment complexes in Aurora, Colorado. This is according to our sister station in Denver. There you can see the group well armed and forcing an apartment door open and making their way in. This has raised concerns amongst residents and Colorado state law enforcement officials. The city of Aurora is issuing a statement today in the wake of national attention following the video's release.
We know that Tren de Aragua come to this country to unsettle this country. They're connected to the Maduro regime, to the military and law enforcement. We know that. They came to this country to commit violent crimes, to spread fentanyl, to kill thousands of Americans, and create havoc and unsettle this nation. So the president took his authority through executive action, and we invoked the Alien Enemies Act. It's the right thing to do. TDA is an enemy of the United States, just by the mere fact of what they did when they got here.
Victor Avila, you arrested people like this. You lost your partner, Special Agent Jaime Zapata, in the line of duty. You know these cartels. What makes Tren de Aragua different, and why did Trump single them out in his executive order?
Great to be with you, Chris. Absolutely, they have to be singled out and separated from most other quote-unquote gangs, and obviously they're more than just gangs. They're definitely a cartel and organized criminals. And Tren de Aragua is special in that category because of several things. One, obviously, they come with a very different ideology and agenda when they enter our country illegally, most of them illegally. And because of the activities that they're continuing to do in our country, illegal activity and serious crimes, it separates them because it's not, they didn't come here to try to assimilate to the United States. They came here with, I believe, special orders from probably higher up in their cartels, which is probably the Cartel de los Soles, who oversees the Tren de Aragua. Remember, Aragua is a state in Venezuela where these individuals, most of them are from. And a lot of them have been incarcerated in Venezuela. A lot of them have been in rehabilitation centers. As a matter of fact, a lot of them have been in the military. And Maduro understands this and uses these Tren de Aragua members as soldiers. And just like Tom Homan says, is to wreak havoc in our country.
How many of these people are in our country, these TDA members?
That's a great question. I don't think we know the actual number. It was definitely in the thousands, probably tens of thousands. We allowed over 1 million of illegal aliens to come in just from Venezuela alone. Obviously, not everybody coming from Venezuela is involved in this group, but they involved themselves in these groups. And even though a lot of them even were admitted by our Border Patrol under the prior administration, they put their fingerprints down. We took their pictures, but they were not identified as TDA members, even though they were. There was obviously not an opportunity to do a proper vetting, and they made their way into the country. Sometimes I think there's a misconception that they're all tattooed a certain way, kind of like an MS-13 gang member, and that's not true. Some are probably the most lower level gang TDA members are, but a lot of them, and especially the hierarchy, are not tattooed up or easily identified.
Yeah, and you were telling me that it's quite possible these members of TDA are actually in high-level meetings with the Maduro regime. You described TDA like Amazon. Explain that.
I say this because I want people to understand the sophistication of this big cartel and this big organization, which is Cartel de los Soles. And I say Amazon because when people think of Amazon, they automatically think of a multi-billion-dollar corporation, sure, with distribution centers around the world and a well-oiled machine when it comes to Amazon. Well, it's the same thing here. They're present not just in Venezuela and the U.S., but in many countries around the world with very direct and sophisticated and disciplined hierarchy with specific orders. And we've seen that, obviously, we've seen it with the horrific crimes here in the U.S., but they have infiltrated us. And it's not just, I know a lot of people think about the apartment complexes in Aurora, Colorado, but they've taken over apartment complexes in Dallas, Texas, San Antonio, El Paso, Texas, Chicago, and many places around the country. And they have spread so quickly around the U.S. in such a short amount of time that you now find Tren de Aragua members where you possibly never thought you would, like in Bozeman, Montana.
Victor, Trump's use of the Alien Enemies Act to deport alleged Tren de Aragua members is based on a presumed link between this group and the Nicolás Maduro regime in Venezuela, like we've been talking about. Can you go into that link a little further and explain the intentions behind it? Why might Maduro be working with TDA?
Well, the reason why I think this act is now trying to be used, and I know there's a judge blocking that right now, and there's an issue there, but it's because we're in unprecedented times, and we need to kind of go back and use unprecedented techniques to go after these groups. Even my investigative techniques and the laws that I was using against these individuals to bring them to justice might not be applicable today, or even if they are applicable, we need to use those and others. And in this case, the Alien Act is something that I think the Trump administration is trying to use because of the definition. And I know there's controversy here, but there is an invasion of our country. These individuals we are at a certain kind of a war. Sometimes people think a war has to be with troops down on the ground, but not necessarily. We're at a cyber war. We're at a war with fentanyl poisoning of our Americans, and death is death. And I think the fighting back of these individuals require thinking outside the box and using laws that maybe we hadn't used in a long time.
Victor, Iran has deep roots in Venezuela. It goes back decades. They've signed a 20-year partnership. Did they have, just in the last minute or so here, did they have any role in the development of Tren de Aragua and its infiltration of the U.S.-Mexico border? I mean, because Iran is not exactly a friend of the United States.
That's correct. And maybe not, Tren de Aragua is not reporting back directly to Iran, but definitely reporting back to Maduro, who then reports back to possibly Hezbollah, who is an extension of Iran. And we know that Hezbollah has been present in Venezuela, as a matter of fact, been present in Mexico. And one thing that I have failed to mention is that Hezbollah and Tren de Aragua have teamed up and partnered with some of the Mexican cartels, obviously because of the funds and to be able to fund their activities. And they know that the cartels make billions of dollars. So that whole connection exists and all the way into our communities. And so these terrorist organizations, like Hezbollah, that we're used to knowing them as terrorists, have expanded into these Tren de Aragua members, and that's why they were designated as such.
So what does this all build up to? I mean, because from what you're describing, this doesn't sound like, the Italian mafia that we learned about, in The Godfather.
No, it's not. And that's why I think calling them a mafia might not be the right term, although they're obviously involved in criminal activity. But I think that it's obviously the ideology. It's the reasoning why they do this. They grow up in a very different culture. These individuals, like Tren de Aragua, grow up hating the police. They grow up trained very young in firearms and crime. And I think we're not used to that. I think the U.S. needs to kind of shift their mentality to understand where they come from, what they're meaning to do in the United States, so we can then act accordingly.
Tren de Aragua and other cartels have been accused of infiltrating the mass migration system into the United States. They're allegedly spreading crime and trafficking humans, as well as the deadly drug fentanyl. What threat do these newly designated terror groups pose to Americans? And how effective is the Trump administration's response? Joining us to break it all down is Victor Avila, retired special agent for HSI-ICE and author of Agent Under Fire. Here's Trump on Air Force One recently, sounding the alarm on the cartels.
I can tell you this, these were bad people. That was a bad group of, as I say, hombres. That was a bad group. When you look at them and you look at the crimes that they've committed, you take a look. You don't get any tougher, you don't get worse than that.
In 4 weeks, we arrested more criminal aliens in the interior United States than Joe Biden did in a year, first of all. Second of all, the border numbers right now are down 96%. 96% decline in 6 weeks. We did in 6 weeks what Joe Biden refused to do in 4 years. And what we needed, as the president articulated during the speech, all we needed was a new president who took border security seriously, and that's what we have in President Trump. 96% decline on border crossing.
A 96% decline, Victor. Have you ever seen anything like that before in your career?
I certainly have not. I could tell you a lot of my colleagues had never seen that because it's kind of happening the opposite of what we saw the last 4 years. We had never seen that happen before. Well, now we're not, we've never seen what's happening now. And I think there's going to be even more unprecedented type of action at the border that none of us have seen, but is absolutely necessary. These cartels are asking for this type of action from the United States. They have killed us. They have extorted us, not just us, but the country of Mexico. And the citizens there are fed up with the presence and the threat that they face every single day, the terror that they're under by these cartels in Mexico.
I just want to come back to something you just said about unprecedented action you think we could see at the border there. What is that unprecedented action? What could it be?
I think it might be military. I think you're already seeing the military set up along our border. I think that you're going to see more of that. But with that presence of the military comes the gathering of intelligence. It comes with flying our aircraft. By the way, we're doing that already with Mexico's permission, flying drones and gathering a lot more intel. Now we're serious about this. Now we're going to gain the advantage over the intelligence that the cartels have had on us for many, many years. We are now going to supersede them with the intelligence so then we can go after them adequately. Now, a lot of people ask me, does that mean the United States is going to go into Mexico militarily? I don't know that. I know that it's now on the table because the designation of these groups as foreign terrorist organizations definitely allows for that to happen. But there's just so many gruesome things happening in Mexico. Just recently, an extermination camp, and you heard me right, an extermination camp was discovered that the Cartel Jalisco New Generation with shoes, over 400 pairs of shoes. It looked like a mini Holocaust there. This is the type of organizations and level of violence that the United States is facing.
Extermination campaign, can you expand on that?
Yeah, down in the state of Jalisco, there was this ranch just recently discovered, and the Mexican government is trying to keep a lid on this because it's horrible. We're talking about incinerating human beings, disappearing them, and there's been groups of people in Mexico trying to look for the loved ones because Mexico has over 100,000 people that have been lost, vanished, and I'm not talking about missing kids or that category. I'm talking about adults that have never been seen before, and a lot of them have been killed and gotten rid of by these cartels. And this extermination camp at this ranch, which Mexico denies. As a matter of fact, the cartel themselves put out a message the other day saying that it wasn't that, it was a training camp. And they might have killed a few people there, but not the 400 plus or so that the evidence shows that was there. And this is very troubling because these cartels are seeking our youth, especially in Mexico. They're recruiting them at an early age to become the members that they want them to become. And then a lot of them make them into the U.S. to continue to, deal with the human trafficking and the drug trafficking in our country. What you have as an idea of a cartel member has to get out of our mind. Our bias of what a cartel member looks like, we have to get rid of that in order to identify them adequately. We have them from all ages.
Victor, now it's a lot harder for cartels like Tren de Aragua to traffic drugs and people across our border. Of course, with Trump, we're talking about this 96% decrease in crossings. But their presence is already confirmed in over 20 states. We showed the graphics earlier. What threat do they pose without an open southern border now?
This is probably one of my biggest concerns is that they're still smuggling. They're still trying to bring their people. They're still trying to bring the fentanyl. As a matter of fact, they're slowing down on the fentanyl because of the attention fentanyl, but they're bringing cocaine, heroin, and methamphetamine, a lot of it into the U.S. There's still gaps in the border, but there's enough fentanyl here to kill every American already, and the threat is here. These individuals, like you said, live here and have been here permanently for a long time. And my concern is that they would retaliate against one of our police officers or even a civilian based on what the United States does and the reaction to that. So that's very concerning as a public safety issue, as a national security issue. I mean, the New York Times put out a report the other day that the Sinaloa cartel was afraid of President Trump. And you know what they did? They went on a killing spree in Sinaloa, and especially in the city of Culiacan. And so this is the reaction. The cartels right now are sitting on every single word that U.S. politicians say, that the president says, and they're reacting on them. And so there has to be caution there as to, you cannot just put out information like that, because the cartel is going to react to that information.